Hey guys, welcome back to Tartan Talk's mini-series, Two Girls and a TV. I'm your host, Dana Thompson, and here on Two Girls and a TV, we talk about the most binge-worthy series/movies. In a world where pop culture and media analysis are dominated by adult voices, Two Girls and a TV brings fresh, youthful perspectives to the conversation, making it the go-to podcast for younger audiences craving authentic commentary. In today's episode, we discuss the long-awaited Wicked Part 1. The movie is based on the famous Tony Award-winning Broadway musical and 1995 novel, which we'll talk more about later. The show talks about friendship, girlhood, and explains how Elphaba became the Wicked Witch and Glinda became the Good Witch. Wicked Part 2 is set to come out in theaters on November 21st, 2025. But before we move any further, I would like to welcome a very special guest and one of the two girls on this episode for Two Girls and a TV, Aurelia.
Hello.
I'm so excited to pick your brain about Wicked, not only about the recent movie, but also about the novel, and just all about Wicked's origins. But before we get into that, I guess we'll talk a bit more about the movie. So you can bring up like your favorite scenes, just what you enjoyed about it. Okay. But first, how many times have you seen the movie?
Like quite a few. I watched it originally with my mum, and then again at Conjay, and then again when my sister wanted to watch it, and a couple times since then.
Okay. What was like your favorite time that you watched it? Because obviously you watched it in like different settings and stuff.
I honestly thought Conjay was so funny because, I don't know, people kept making comments, and so it was more fun to watch in an audience where like people were just like having fun with it as well.
What was your favorite song?
My favorite song? I don't know, what was yours?
Can you guess?
I don't know. Defying Gravity.
No. But I like that guess though, because that's very like, not generic. I feel like generic's the right word, but like, it is a good song. I like it. I feel like yours is like, I'm Not That Girl.
I do like that. That was my original favorite. Okay. When I saw it, I was like, oh, I like this song. Mm-hmm. I like The Wizard and I a lot.
Oh,
is that yours?
Yes. No, that's not my favorite song.
I can't see you being a popular girl, but maybe it is. I don't know.
I am.
Yeah, seriously, yes. Popular?
I am. I mean, yeah, I feel like that is very, especially because I really don't think I'm a popular girl, am I? But I do like the song.
No,
like
I
feel like
that song.
That's like what first attracted me to it, especially because like Ariana Grande does it in such like her own like fun way.
Oh my god!
And I think it was so cool to actually like see it because I haven't seen the Broadway musical.
Yeah, same. I think that was like going into watching Wicked. I was a bit bored. I was a bit like, this is not gonna be fun. And then like I realized that Ariana Grande actually was like, she was so funny with it. And I think Popular was like that song. I was like, yeah, she's really funny with this role as well.
I love it. I love how she did it too. And I like how just Glinda, the character, is like, she's not only just like that in the beginning, like the rude popular girl, but she like has this like quirky awkwardness like about her. Like, not that you can't take her seriously, but like every time she like has like a rude or like a mean moment, you're just like no, like Glinda, no, or Linda,
because she thinks she's being nice, and I think that's like the whole point is that she thinks she's so good.
Yeah.
And so like everyone like believes it, like no, you're perfect.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And the hair flipping, I just can't get enough of. Like that's like my favorite part. Like I'll just like watch clips of just her switching her hair. Not that I do, because that's kind of like weird, but like I enjoy that. I think it adds to her character and kind of like her ambiance. I don't think that was the right word, ambiance.
Yeah, no. Like her, I don't think aura is right either.
No, but like aura.
We get it. Yeah, we get
it. Yeah, aura. You obviously liked it because you saw it like 4 times. But wait, your favorite song is The Wizard and I.
Maybe. I don't know. I feel like my mind just went blank on what the songs are.
Do you want me to name them?
Yeah, go for it. Run through.
No, I'm not going to do it in order, but Popular, Defying Gravity, Dear Old Shiz. But it's like, Dear Old Shiz is like really short because it's like, they're just like, Dear Old Shiz. It's really not like, I don't consider it a song. I skip over it every time I'm listening to it. There's obviously The Wizard and I.
I think that's a good
There's obviously there's The Wizard and I. There's the first song where it's like no one wants the wicked.
Yeah.
Which, I kind of guilty. Love that one too.
I kind of love that. Yeah. I think it's one of the best. I can't with a sentimental man. I actually.
Why do you think I didn't say it?
I've rewatched it and I skipped that scene.
I feel
because it's no offense, it's boring.
No, hot take. They could have chosen someone better. Hot take. hot take. But
it was really funny when I watched it because he was Zeus. I don't know, one's not gonna know the show, in like Chaos on Netflix, and he plays Zeus, and so he showed up, and I was like, why is he just like this man in power all the time? And so I was so concerned, but I think I don't know necessarily he was a bad actor, but more just like
not. It's just
he was just
the voice. I don't like it.
You don't like it. I think, I mean, you're supposed to be frustrated with the wizard though. Like that's the whole point. He's like conniving, and he like doesn't have any power, and like the whole ending just makes it so frustrating.
It does.
So it probably adds to it. But.
Okay. So now that we've talked about the movie a bit, okay, for people who don't know, Aurelia, because she's like super smart, recently did a study looking into the portrayal of sapphics in television and film. And you're probably thinking like Dana, I know like we normally talk about like more fun stuff, not saying that sapphics isn't fun, but we keep it light. We keep it casual, keep it cash. Why are we talking about sapphics? Well, I think queer representation and sapphics is something that is super popular nowadays, again with like quantity and things like that, and just overall representation. So I think we 100% need to talk about that more. So I thought that we'd talk about that in the context of Wicked. But before we get into the movie, a lot of you guys don't really know where Wicked came from originally. And before I talked to Aurelia, if I'm being honest, I didn't know it was a book either.
Wait, really?
No, I didn't.
You didn't?
No. I thought it was, for some reason, I thought it was like a play. Like, I thought it...
That makes sense.
I thought it was like a play, like, kind of like Shakespeare. Like, I thought it was like a play.
Okay, that makes
and then it got into, like, the musical, but I didn't really know, like, it was like a novel.
Yeah,
like,
no, it's a book. Like, so, obviously, The Wizard of Oz, it's such a crazy, like, thing, because it's basically this guy who, like, essentially wrote fan fiction on The Wizard of Oz, if you think about it that way. But he saw The Wizard of Oz, and then they made... Did they make a play? I think it was just a musical. So they made a musical of that, and then there was a movie of that, and then this guy wrote Wicked, which is like a prequel to that, which is just about the Wicked Witch of the West, or Elphaba.
So for people who don't know, to give a little more context, the original Wicked, Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, was written by Gregory Maguire and published in 1995. As Aurelia said, it's a novel based on The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and you know, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz and just Oz in general is just like a black hole of so many things. We're constantly, there's something new or some sort of adaptation or like things like that are coming out. So it's just so funny to me because I did not know there was more. But basically, Wicked dives into Elphaba and how she came to be the Wicked Witch of the West. And now that I've given you a little bit of background, we are going to dive into how the topic of sapphics relates to Wicked. And I'm going to ask Aurelia some questions, and she's basically just going to give us some insight into sapphics, what it is, what queer representation should look like, what queer baiting is, and how Wicked pertains to that. So I guess, Aurelia, if you don't mind, we could start off with, a lot of people don't know, and I knew what the word sapphics was, but I never really dove into it. So if you could just give us a brief description, or even in your own words, of what is sapphics.
Yeah, absolutely. So sapphics is just defined as like the romantic or sexual relationships between women, and a lot of people consider that like lesbians and stuff, but it's more just like the relationship. So it could be any sexuality at all. And
how does it pertain to like media in this time and age?
So one of the things we talked about a lot was like how there's a lot more queer representation, because I think there's been a lot, even like politically, surrounding like LGBTQ rights and all of that. And so we found that a lot of like the research we did was very inconclusive. So a lot of things said that there was really underrepresented in media, and a lot of things when you search up the percentages of in population and then in TV, it doesn't line up, and then it's overrepresentation. So we kind of decided that it was a lot of misrepresentation in the quantity of it. Because, you know, we see things in media, it like gets popular, and then like people want to put it in, but then they just kind of throw it in there with like no real like background or like knowledge of what happens, and that happens a lot with a lot of things, not just queer representation.
Yeah, and to add on to that, in your report, you talk about how queer representation has increased in quantity but not quality. So if you could break that down, as you did a little bit, but talk about more of the quality aspect
Yeah.
and what that looks like.
So I think we were trying to define it, and we found that like quality it's hard to define as like what is good, and we were kind of thinking of it's easier to identify what it just isn't representing the queer community. And so a lot of all the pieces of media that represent sapphics or like lesbian culture was kind of they used like horror a lot to try and like get around having queer representation, and it was a way to kind of put them in the story but also make them like inherently bad. And so they kind of got away from that, and then there's a lot more about like they kind of usually when they're represented it's more like they fit into like these gender roles of like one of them's a guy and one of them's a girl, like more masculine presenting and such, and it's hard to find representation that doesn't fall into that category or more stereotypes.
What does quality and queer representation like look like to you personally? Just like in the shows that you enjoy, movies, books?
Yeah, I think I'll go history and then me.
Yeah.
So there's something called the Vito Russo test, which is basically like it's similar to the Bechdel test, which is like women in TV and film. And so the like criteria for it, if it passes the Vito Russo test, is that they have to have a speaking role, obviously, LGBTQ characters, and the whole identity like cannot be the fact that they're queer, and they have, if they're removed from the plot, like if they're removed from the story, it has to affect the plot in some way. And so I think that's really important to like, I hate when characters like you find a character that you like and all that they have about them is that they're queer, and it's just like that's what they go on about and on about. And I think it's important to have shows like Heartstopper or like things like Love, Simon that like kind of dive into like coming out and stuff, or like being queer. But I think it's also important. I recently watched Agatha All Along, and that was kind of like a side plot. Was their relationship, and I think that's also really important that that's not the plot, but it's part of the story, and they can just be part of who they are as well.
Like, and if you don't mind, we could talk a bit more about like Love, Simon and Love, Victor.
Yeah,
because I've watched both of them. Because Love, Simon, I believe, was a movie, and then Love, Victor was a TV show. And when you talk about like being queer, is like the whole like point of the movie or the TV show, and that kind of being their whole personality. Would you think of Love, Simon being something where being gay is kind of his whole personality, or that's where the story is? Because it focuses on him navigating his sexuality, but also his relationship with others. Or is that, would you consider, but basically what I'm trying to say is, do you consider that being the entire plot, or is it more about the journey of him finding his sexuality?
Yeah, I think, I'm not saying that like those stories don't matter. I think it's important that people know that is like something that queer people have to go through. But in terms of like the majority of stories, I don't think they should revolve around having this big like coming out scene. And I think it's important to show queer people just like comfortable in society, even though that might not exist fully in everywhere. But I've watched that film a couple of times, I think, and I mean that's the story they're telling, so of course it's important. And I thought obviously that's not his whole personality. You see different aspects of him. You see him with his friends, but that's what the story's about. That's him contemplating his sexuality and whatnot. Yeah.
And I know you haven't seen Love, Victor, but obviously it came out after Love, Simon. And I personally think they do a bit of a better job when it comes to that, because although like the beginning is about his coming out journey, it also focuses on the relationship with his parents, because I believe that like Victor, his family's Catholic, so I think they navigate like they added on like the concept of religion and kind of mixing that with LGBTQIA plus and that whole community, and I think that adds like a whole nother level on it, because I feel like in the beginning of like television and media, when we started introducing queer representation and things like that, a lot of it was all like that person comes out and like and just like, I'm so happy for you, you found who you are, let's go eat cake. I think that was important, that they showed a negative outcome of coming out and kind of navigating through that negative relationship that he has with his parents, at least in the beginning, because eventually it does work out. Thank God it works out, because that was really stressful as a viewer. But just to go through that, I think, is important to show not only the positive outcomes but the negative outcomes.
Yeah, similarly with the religion, there's a film called The Miseducation of Cameron Post. It's also a book, and it's about this girl who she gets caught, like, I think kissing one of her friends or something, and they send her to like a conversion camp, and it's like her story there, and it's like her escaping like with friends or whatever. But I think that's another one that kind of dives into like the more negative side of it, that it's not necessarily always a happy ending.
As well as, I think there's another movie called The Cheerleader, and it is like I think it's more of like a comedy, but it like goes that like comedic aspect. I think it's an earlier movie. I don't know when it came out, but it was definitely early. Like, it was either in the 90s or the late 80s.
Is it called The Cheerleader?
Yeah, it's literally called The Cheerleader.
I think I've heard of it, yeah. I think I have.
But no, because it was free on YouTube one day, and I was like scrolling, and I was like, oh, I need a movie to watch. Like, it's so late. Like, I need something to watch. And I started watching it, and originally, because I don't read. And no, not that I don't read. I read, but like I wasn't gonna read the whole like synopsis.
No,
before. Like I did. Like, why would I do that?
It was late. You wanted a film, exactly.
I didn't know what it was about at all. And basically the premise is the girl's a cheerleader, and she is like that stereotypical cheerleader, dating the quarterback, as straight as can be, and she realizes that she's gay, and I don't know why I said it like that. She realizes she's a lesbian. And her parents send her to a camp, just like the other.
Right. I think I've seen the trailer for this actually.
Yeah. And then she finds, it's like a combo camp. It's like has women and it has men, but they're like split up. One half of the camp is like, and they're trying to reverse the gayness. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, conversion therapy.
Yeah.
I don't know why they think that does anything.
But anyway, yeah, I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
And important.
And I think, honestly, a little bit that kind of brings it back to Wicked.
Yeah.
Because I think that's, like, part of, like, what Ariana Grande says about, like, Glinda is that, like, maybe she's a little bit in the closet.
Yeah.
Right? And she has this, like, really flirty relationship with Fiyero.
Yeah.
But I think for her, it's kind of, like, all in the fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you get, like, into, like, the queerness of Wicked is, like, her and Elphaba's relationship. And I think a lot of people ship like Elphaba and Fiyero.
Yeah.
And the way I see the relationships is like Glinda and Fiyero are very like flirty, and I think they just have fun with it. Like they're like, you're perfect, I'm perfect, whatever. And I think Elphaba and Fiyero, there's so much tension, but like I don't see it as like sexual tension. I think Elphaba is just like so mad at him sometimes. I think she just gets so annoyed that he just like eagerly follows either of them anywhere.
Yeah.
Or like just blindly kind of goes with it. And like then you're gonna get like Glinda and Elphaba who have this like real chemistry and like this like great relationship.
Okay. Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Kind of like diving into like the original novel and some things that like involved the romantic relationship between Elphaba and Glinda, which was kept out of the Broadway musical and the movie adaptation, and kind of a little bit in the book because the author never really directly says queer, but he does kind of like allude to it constantly, which is kind of really annoying because like just give me a clear answer please so I can be satisfied and happy. But anyway, even to the point where the author was describing the relationship as modest and restraint.
I don't like no you get it's not what you get.
I don't understand that because I'm just like, what do you mean like modest and restraint? I'm like, yeah, I just don't understand that.
I think he wrote the book. I mean, the book's like 1995, which is like it's not that old, but like it's older. So maybe that's what he was. Is I think from the book, it's probably a bit more modest and restrained than like the modernized kind of way it is now. But yeah, no, it's not. It's definitely not modest and restrained.
And the novel even has scenes, and the author has described like intimate scenes and moments between Elphaba and Glinda. Like, which obviously were later removed from the adaptation because none of you guys have seen it.
No.
Unless, like, there's, like, a secret version that no one's sending me. But even though most people do not know about the novel, they still continue to ship these two characters together. Yes. Which I think is so funny because I don't think, like, no matter how much you try to remove the scenes, like, you can still clearly
exactly.
so see it, like throughout the songs, and
like, what is this feeling is just, it's so coded, like you can't even like convince me it's not. And I watched it the first time and then I was like, wait, huh? And I was like watching it and then all of a sudden they go loathing and I'm like, okay, so not quite. You were so close. So close. And then I when I rewatched it with my sister, I paused the film and I went, so what do you think? And then she was like, well, do they like each other? And I was like, see, that's what I thought. And then you get into this whole thing and it's not, apparently.
Yeah. And moving to, I guess, some more questions, do you think that these scenes were removed on purpose? And if so, why? Because obviously we're in a society that is definitely more queer accepting. And we oftentimes try to even push queer representation. So why would that be left out?
Yeah, I think partially, like we were saying, like the universe is so big now that it's kind of like you don't want to there's like a huge fan base for like everything else that you don't want to upset like the original fans in a way. So I think partially it was purposeful, but like also not necessarily, because I've seen a couple interviews where they've said that they did it because they needed to get to the Emerald City because the first part was getting so long from all these scenes. But I think a lot of it was probably for that, like media purposes. If you put like a queer relationship, then sometimes that becomes like the whole deal of the thing, and I think they didn't want to draw attention away from that, and that's obviously like not an excuse, that's like, not a good reason not to include it, but I think that's probably where they were coming from. And I think like I said, like they kind of leave that love triangle up to interpretation, and so if they leave it open, like people do what they will with the story.
We're interpreting.
We're interpreting.
We're diving in. You also bring up the idea in your report about Wicked being a prime example of sapphics, which we did talk about in queer baiting. Now, for people who don't know, can you break down what queer baiting is?
Right, so queer baiting is like the implication of a romantic relationship, but it's like never confirmed. And you kind of said that with the book, like he doesn't confirm it, and you're just like, it's here. Why aren't you saying it? Like there are kiss scenes in the book, and whatnot. So yeah, that's what it is. So it has no. It's really just, it's so like ambiguous because it's kind of like, are they implying it? You don't know. It's kind of subjective, but that's what that means.
Okay, thank you. And as you said, like the relationship is kind of like ambiguous and like up to interpretation. So how do you think us and like we as viewers distinguish romantic relationships and like just close friendships to prevent queer baiting?
Yeah, honestly, it's a hard thing to distinguish because everyone has different relationships and like different ways that they manifest, right? Some people are more comfortable being more intimate with just close friends, and some people aren't. And so again, it kind of comes down to interpretation. But there are so many, like for this specifically, I think you can point to a lot of things that like I don't know, their like relationship is very important, and you can obviously tell that. So whether like you feel it's platonic or not, like that's kind of up to you, but either way you can't really say that it isn't romantic.
And do you think it's our job to be able to distinguish these relationships, or should the creator of these characters and plots be able to bring that to our attention?
I think I don't know. It's so hard to just like describe and stuff, but I think a lot of directors would like to leave it up to interpretation, especially for this, just because like if you have that view that like you're shipping someone, people ship God knows what. I think it's just important to like respect that like that's what they view, whatever. And like you see a lot of like fights on the internet, I think, like people are like, no, they're not shipping, like they're together, and then people are like, yeah, but it's in the book, and there's a lot of just like back and forth, and it's just like, hey, if they want to think that, they can think that. And so I just like, if you don't get involved, I think that's the best way to see it, like just understand that you have your views and people have theirs. But obviously it's important to have that confirmed queer relationships and not just leave everything to ambiguity.
Because then it's not really a movie anymore. It's kind of just imagine what you would like.
Just like, for you, I don't know. Whatever you think.
How is Glinda and Elphaba's romantic connection important to the plot? Because obviously they focus on like their friendship and their like, I don't like to say sisterhood because we're kind of talking about like the romantic implication of Glinda and Elphaba, but what do you think about that?
I think their whole relationship like is the plot, and like the whole story starts because no one wants the wicked, because she's like, I thought you were her friend, like, what, is it true? And that's how she kind of gets off of this whole basically tangent about how she met Elphabird's school, and so like she focuses obviously a lot. That's like the whole purpose is their relationship. So obviously, like, romantic or not, that is what the story's about. So
okay. Oftentimes, like, in society uses animals or like mythical beings as an excuse to remove part of the character's like identity, such as like race, gender, and sexual orientation. Like, for example, like the Little Mermaid, and how everybody was complaining, like, oh my god, like, I can't believe she's black, why would you do this? Like, but then the excuse is that casting directors and people who were behind the movie were saying, well, guys, like, she's a fish. Like, I don't think her, like, race would really matter. Like, yeah. Sebastian, Jamaican, the crab.
Right.
Or has
an
accent.
Yeah, I don't think I processed that, but yeah.
And then Flounder doesn't have an accent, so I think it's
kind of... it's whatever part of the sea you're from, I guess. I mean...
Do you think that this is basically, like, important, and does Wicked count? I don't know if they're mythical beings, but like...
I don't know. I mean, it's like obviously a fantasy fictional world, but I think there's a part of it that's like, okay, she's already green, like, we don't want to like keep adding elements just to add elements. And I think there's like an aspect of that, like, we don't want to make her different just to make her different or whatever. So I think that was probably part of it, but also like there's a lot of shows, like there used to be lots of movies, like I said before, like in horror, and they used to just like, there was this trope of like the lesbian vampire and whatnot, to kind of make them seem evil. So I guess that kind of plays into mythical beings or whatever, just to make them seem like estranged, in a way.
And when you think about that now, like, I'm like, lesbian vampire sounds cool, but I guess like back then, like, it was more of a ploy, so I understand.
There's, if you portray it in a way that's like obviously not like threatening just because it's threatening, then it's fine. But
was it more of like a Vampire Diaries, like Edward Cullen, or was it seriously like
no, it was more like it was like murder. It was like Predator kind of like, women are just preying on other women, kind of thing. So that's why we don't like it.
Dang it. Okay.
There is a show, First Kill, though, that's more...
I watched that!
You watched that?
And no one else has watched it, and it makes me...
and it makes me
so upset, and it got canceled, and I love that show, like, too much.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it became, like, my, like, everyday, like, rewatch, and nobody else has watched it, and it's so upsetting. Yeah. Because I love
Netflix,
that show.
I could get into a whole other tangent about how Netflix cancels shows, specifically queer shows. Yeah. But yeah.
Do you know that they're moving to New Jersey? They're building studios in New Jersey. Yes.
Oh, yes, I did hear
you heard in Fort Monmouth at that like old army base. They're buying it. It's near Asbury Park, like near the beaches.
Oh, wait,
and they're going to build like a whole studio, like a whole complex. They're planning on building up to 12 studios.
Wow.
And they're going to have like an office there.
I feel like this is turning into an advertisement, but that's so cool.
No, it's becoming that. But I'm like, so where's my job? Where's my check? Like, where's my position? Like, internship? Exactly. But sadly, it won't be built till 2027.
Oh.
So I don't know where I'll be, but yeah.
I'll be here.
Well, yeah, you'll be here. But like, I won't. Tear. Right. Yeah. Anyway, next question. We were talking about queer baiting earlier.
Yeah.
This is kind of like, not a stretch, but I was thinking about this late at night, and I was like, what if they're using Jonathan Bailey and Cynthia Rivas as an excuse?
Yeah, honestly, I didn't think about it originally when I was talking about the queer baiting, but I think it's a really good point, because they're like, if you don't know Wicked and you're like, hey, Jonathan Bailey and Cynthia Erivo in us, you kind of assume, okay, he's gay, so there's not going to be a relationship with anyone else that's like female, so you kind of eliminate Glinda and Elphaba. And then if you're like, wait, Cynthia Erivo is also queer, then you're like, wait, then that must be the relationship. So I think it could definitely be taken that way, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, when it comes to queer baiting, you're kind of, the implication is not usually to do with the actors, but I see that could definitely be.
Or maybe I was thinking it in like a literal sense, like, I don't, you know what, I'm just gonna leave that there.
No, I know what you mean, actually.
Like, kind of like literally like bait, like, because every time I see Jonathan Bailey, I'm like, oh, I gotta watch that.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
And like, yeah.
No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean, because like a lot of when you have like people who play a lot of queer characters, you're like, okay, if I'm looking for queer representation, I'm gonna look for more shows with that person in it. And so if you look for queer actors, if you're looking for queer shows and you're like, oh, hey, they're queer and then they're in this, I'm gonna go watch that.
Yeah. Okay, so as we're closing out, I'm gonna ask my last few questions.
Right.
So Elphaba is often viewed as an outcast, at least throughout the part that we've seen so far. So in what ways do you think you feel like an outcast in society?
I think my accent, no, I'm kidding. I think I've had like some trouble like making friends over the years, so probably like that. Like I get very like anxious about like what to say, and I think we all get a bit like that. Like we'll have things that we like don't like about ourselves, and we all feel like a bit of an outcast. And we think that like everyone can kind of see it about us, and like Elphaba, everyone can see what she hates about herself. So there's like that. What makes you feel like an outcast, do you think, Dana?
I don't know if I've ever really truly felt like an outcast, like in like for like a specific thing. I think oftentimes people are scared of me. Not scary in the way like grr, but like oh my god, I can't believe I just did that. Okay, not in the way that like horror, in like fear. Yeah, but like in more
I run screaming.
Everyone's like, hey, ah! Like it's literally like all I feel like people like might feel. But I think it's more of like my personality, and also eye contact is a huge thing for me. It's how I show that people.
We had
that
a
I'm
conversation
like,
about this. I'm bad at eye contact.
It's how I show people that like I'm listening and that like I'm interested in what they say and what they're saying. If I don't give you eye contact, I don't care. So
good to know.
No, no, really good to know. But I feel like I freak people out sometimes because I just like I can't like. I zone in and like I don't take my eyes off people. So I think either people think I'm like a perv, or like they just think like, wow, she just locked in.
She's really interested.
Yeah, she's really interested in what I gotta say.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes I feel like I'm on the opposite. Like people don't think I'm interested when really I just like show my interests in a very specific way. Yeah. Probably.
Wait, that's a like great little segue. No, well, not really a segue to what I want to talk about next, but I thought about a really good question. So, how do you show people that you're interested in them? Because I think Elphaba and Galinda's relationship is really specific because they kind of show that I don't want to say love each other, I feel like they're strong, but they enjoy each other's company in different ways. I feel like Galinda's very focused on changing Elphaba and making her into the best person that she can be. Yeah. While Elphaba's kind of like, she's getting on my nerves, like, but I love her, so I'm going to stick with it. So, I guess I want to say, how do you show people that you're interested in them, whether that's platonically, romantically?
Yeah, I think like Glinda and Elphaba, like they're quite extremes. I think at one point Elphaba's just like, okay, like I have a friend, like wow, like right before Popular, and Glinda's more just like, I think the end of that's really sweet because she decides that all she needs is that little flower, and there's like really she's like beautiful, whatever. But I think the way I show people I'm interested in them, I tend to like relate a lot, which is like probably not the best way to like acknowledge someone else's experience. But like to show people I'm interested in them, I'll probably like get interested in the things that they're interested in, or find myself talking about things that like relate to them, or like just to find like a connection almost. Probably
that works. No, not that works. I think it's such a bad response. Okay. I guess the way I show people I'm interested in them is I'll write lists about like what people like, because I don't have a really good memory sometimes, especially when it comes to like multiple people. So this weird thing I do is like in my notes app I have a list of like what people like, or like things that like stuck out to me about them. I won't show them the list unless like that I know that I won't see them for a very long time. Oh, okay. Like there was a friend that I had like a long time ago, actually when I was a freshman. I was really good friends with a senior. And I'm pointing at myself, and I'm pointing at her, just so you guys know. Because she's a freshman, I'm a senior. Fun fact.
Fun fact.
Okay, fun fact. But I really enjoyed her, and I think she helped me a lot through my freshman year. And something that, like, I just started immediately was I started making lists about the things she liked so I could remember them.
Oh, that's so sweet. I'm going to have to start doing this with you, Dana.
Perfect. Not perfect, but, like, if you want to. I'm not going to force that upon you. But I did that.
Dana likes eye contact.
Yeah, she likes eye contact. But... yeah, I do that for people to show that I'm interested. I mean, not that they ever see the list, but it's just like, okay, like she hates bananas, like she loves chocolate, like those types of things that I like to just like keep in track. I think we're gonna close it out with like 1 or 2 more questions.
All right.
But just talking about the theme of Wicked, they, in the very beginning, like the first few minutes of the movie, they talk about the story challenges the more like simplistic view of good versus evil, and like exploring the complexities of like human nature and basically what the view is of good people and bad people, and what makes good people good and what makes evil or bad people bad. So do you think there's a such thing as good and bad people?
That's a difficult one.
Yeah, I know. Such
So,
a gray area.
I know. It's very gray. I don't think there's a good person, a bad person, because it's so subjective. Like, I could think one trait is like really, really just, and you could think that something that I believe about the world is completely just makes me an awful person.
Yeah.
And that kind of comes into like, again, like politics. Like people think like have such, oh, if you believe this, then I just don't want anything to do with you. So it's really subjective in that way. But I don't think people are like I said, I don't think people are like born wicked or whatever.
Yeah.
I think that people like have experiences and that makes them feel certain ways about things, and that like makes them like defensive, just like Alphabet is and stuff. And then sometimes people take that the wrong way, or some people just don't realize it, like Linda, she just kind of takes it whatever. She doesn't care. I don't know, what do you think about that?
I kind of agree with you. I think the thing between like a good person and a bad person is just like such a gray area, because it depends on like what you are as a person, and like the traits that you and like attributes that you like or do not like in another person, whether that's you like someone who is selfless, or you kind of like someone that's selfish. And obviously there are different levels to everything, but I think that just I think like kindness is a huge thing to differentiate like a bad person and a good person. Not that kindness needs to be like the forefront of every situation that they're in, but I think also understanding is a huge thing, which separates like a good person from a bad person. Is you don't have to agree on everything. Like with like the people that I'm in relationships with and friendships with, I don't like, are you kidding me? I don't agree with everything that they say or that everything that they do. But like at the end of the day, that I know that they're understanding, and that being okay with not being the same at everything.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important. And I like that like I don't have to like everything that you do. I don't like chocolate. All my friends like chocolate. I hate chocolate. I genuinely I don't like it. And I don't really like candy either, but my friends love candy. But like I'm okay with that.
I'm not gonna be like, no, you can't have candy because we're friends.
Like that's not. And obviously, guys, that's like a very like.
That's a very surface level.
Surface level example. But yeah. One of our last questions is, what do you think we can do as a community to provide support and prevention for queer baiting and just help support sapphics in television and media?
Yeah, I think there's not a lot like you can necessarily do, I guess, as a lay person, if you will, as like not a director or a writer, but more just kind of like acknowledging, like I said, like the people will have like whatever view they have about certain people in the show, ships, all that, and kind of just like not avoiding queer media just because it's something that you don't relate to, or like getting out of your comfort zone, maybe, if that's something that gets you out of your comfort zone. In looking at like things that maybe don't relate to you. Maybe you're not queer, but it's important to be understanding of other things around you, and the same goes for other minorities, really.
I love that. Normally in these episodes, like, I end with questions like, is this show bingeable? What's the purpose of this film? But I think I'm gonna do it a bit differently this time, and I kind of want to give some suggestions for people who want to start looking into just more shows that actually have like quality instead of quantity, and some recommendations that you would give to people of good shows and movies that they could watch.
I've watched a few. I think Agatha All Along I watched recently, which was really good. I thought it was really slow to get into, but it's like plot heavy, so if you like Marvel and stuff, that's a good one. Heartstopper is always cute, and I know a lot of people watch that. We talked about First Kill. Some more just like, this isn't really queer, but I enjoy these shows, like The Wilds and The Power are very like woman forward and like very like, what if the world wasn't like consumed by the patriarchy kind of thing. I don't know if you have any suggestions as well.
I would double down on Heartstopper. I think that's a good show, especially because and if you enjoy reading, the graphic novels are just as good.
Yeah, I read those recently.
Yeah,
they're
really good as well. Yeah, I really just like double down on Heartstopper. Take the recommendation for Agatha
All Along.
Disney Plus. Heartstopper, Netflix, First Kill, Netflix, things like that. So I think those are super important, good ones. And for Heartstopper, it doesn't just focus on like coming out and things like that, which is the premise of like the first season, but it gets into more
real things.
I also recommend Love Victor.
Okay,
I think
we talked about.
It's a good progression along with Heartstopper. It's just a good progression with, yes, we focus on how they're coming out and they're coming to know themselves, but also navigating things like friendships, relationships, things like that.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for being with me, Aurelia. This has been a long time coming, so I'm really glad you were able to make it, and I just learned a lot. So guys, thank you for watching this week. Again, I'm your host, Dana Thompson, and with me, my amazing guest co-host,
Aurelia.
And I'll see you next week, and that's a wrap.